In history, every great empire thought it was immortal. Rome, with its legions and aqueducts, believed its dominion was eternal. The British Empire, on which the sun never set, saw its reign as a permanent fixture of the world. But what if their downfall wasn't a unique tragedy, a story of its time? What if the very forces that brought these giants to their knees are, at this very moment, silently at work in our world? If you've ever felt a sense of unease about the state of things, like the ground is shifting beneath your feet, if you've wondered why the nation seems more divided than ever, why your money doesn't go as far as it used to, or why it feels like we're stumbling from one crisis to the next, you're not imagining it. What's happening isn't an accident. It's a pattern, a historical echo of a script that has played out time and time again. Before we dive into this pattern, I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your corner of the globe. It's always incredible to see how these ideas connect us from every continent. And if this is the kind of thinking that resonates with you, make sure to subscribe. Because what we're about to uncover will fundamentally change how you view the news, the economy, and the future of global power. Now, let's step back and look at the blueprint for collapse. It begins with a slow, almost invisible process. The first stage is military overextension. An empire, at its peak, becomes the world's policeman. It builds bases on every continent, sails its fleets across every ocean, and fights wars in distant lands that its own citizens can barely find on a map. These commitments are initially a sign of strength, but they slowly become a crippling burden. The cost of maintaining this global footprint starts to bleed the treasury dry, consuming resources that could be invested back home. It's like a champion athlete who insists on competing in every single event, eventually exhausting their strength and becoming vulnerable. This immense military spending leads directly to the next phase, currency debasement. How does a government pay for endless wars and a global military presence when its tax revenues are no longer enough? They find the shortcut. It starts to create money out of thin air. In ancient Rome, emperors would clip the edges of silver coins, melting down the shavings to mint new lighter ones. Today, the process is digital, executed with a few keystrokes on a central bank's computer. But the result is identical. The value of each dollar, each peso, each pound is diluted. Your savings lose their purchasing power. The prices of groceries, gas, and housing begin a relentless climb, not because those things are more valuable, but because the money in your pocket is worth less. This isn't inflation. It's a hidden tax on every single person. As the currency weakens, the empire enters a debt spiral. The government is now spending far more than it takes in, year after year. To tackle these huge deficits, it really has no choice but to borrow some cash. At first, this seems manageable, but soon, it has to borrow just to pay the interest on its previous debts. This is the point of no return. The debt grows exponentially, a monstrous weight pressing down on the entire economy. It becomes a mathematical certainty that the debt can never be repaid in sound money. The only ways out are to default, destroying its creditworthiness, or to print even more money, destroying the currency itself. This financial decay is mirrored by a physical one, the loss of productive capacity. An empire, fat on cheap credit and a strong currency, finds it easier to buy things from other countries than to make them at home. Factories that once hummed with activity are shuttered and moved overseas, where labor is cheaper. The nation becomes a society of consumers, not producers. It imports everything from electronics to clothing to basic industrial components, hollowing out its own manufacturing base. While this provides a short-term illusion of prosperity with cheap goods, it makes the empire critically dependent on its rivals. It loses the skills, the knowledge, and the industrial infrastructure that made it great in the first place. The ability to build and create is replaced by the ability to borrow and buy. With the economic foundations crumbling, the social fabric begins to tear. This is the stage of social decay. Faith in institutions evaporates. Corruption, once hidden in the shadows, becomes blatant and widespread. The political class seems disconnected from the struggles of ordinary people, more interested in power and personal enrichment than in public service. Society fractures along lines of class, politics, and identity. A sense of shared purpose is lost, replaced by cynicism, division, and distrust. People no longer believe in the system or in each other. The moral and cultural decline accelerates as the virtues of hard work, responsibility, and community are eroded by a culture of instant gratification and entitlement. This internal rot eventually becomes visible to the rest of the world. Other nations, watching the empire debase its currency and pile up impossible debts, begin to lose faith. This triggers the most significant shift of all, the loss of reserve currency status. For decades, the empire's money was the foundation of global trade. Everyone needed it. Everyone trusted it. But now, that trust is broken. Countries start looking for alternatives. They begin to trade with each other in their own currencies or in commodities like gold. Slowly at first, and then all at once, the world moves away from the empire's money. This is the fatal blow. The empire can no longer export its inflation or finance its deficits by printing money that the rest of the world is forced to accept. The game is up. The final stage is collapse. It's often shockingly sudden. After decades of slow decay, the system reaches a tipping point. The currency implodes, the debt markets freeze, and the complex supply chains that fed the consumer economy grind to a halt. It's not a foreign army breaking down the gates. It's an internal implosion. The illusion of wealth vanishes overnight. Banks close, businesses fail, and the government, stripped of its ability to borrow or print its way out of trouble, becomes powerless. The empire, which once seemed like an unshakable colossus, fractures and falls. Now, let's bring this into the present. The United States in 2025. Look at the checklist. A military presence in over 150 countries with commitments that drain hundreds of billions of dollars a year. Check. A national debt that has spiraled past $34 trillion. A figure so vast it's almost meaningless, growing by $1 trillion every 100 days. Check. A currency that has lost over 97% of its purchasing power since the creation of the Federal Reserve, with money printing reaching unprecedented levels? Check. An industrial heartland hollowed out, with the nation now dependent on its geopolitical rival, China, for everything from pharmaceuticals to electronics? Check. A society deeply polarized, with trust in media, government, and finance at all-time lows, and a pervasive sense of cultural and moral decline? Check. A world that is actively seeking alternatives to the US dollar, with major economies forming new trade blocs to bypass the American financial system? Check. Every single stage of the historical pattern is not just present. It's accelerating. The final collapse will not come from a foreign invasion. It will be an internal event, a financial and social unraveling that will feel as sudden and shocking to the unprepared as the fall of the Berlin Wall. The great and fatal mistake of every empire is the belief in its own exceptionalism. They all believe, this time it's different. We are smarter, our technology is better, our system is more resilient. They believe it right up until the moment the lights go out. History doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. And right now, the rhythm is unmistakable. The moral of the story isn't to despair, but to understand. Because only by recognizing the pattern can we hope to prepare for what comes next.